Hey, Noble Ones, are you ready for the new dose of absolute total nonsense and cope? Well, today we're checking out this article from The New Republic, breaking news, in fact, from Washington and beyond. Title, this was from September 10th, 2025, by the way. Title, The Far Right is already blaming the left for Charlie Kirk's shooting. The attack on the conservative activist Wednesday garnered an outpouring of rage online. Let me just respond to the headline very quickly. It's not just the far right. It's everyone who has actually reviewed the evidence and is not brainwashed. Now, given, do I accuse the entirety of the left? No. However, the shooter was radical left-wing. This is the truth. And then again, who celebrated? Where were all the conservatives celebrating for the death of Charlie Kirk? Once again, to those who come here or on Reddit to say, look, Metatron says it's a left-winger who shot Charlie Kirk even though he was a conservative, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, boo, as they say. Your boos mean nothing to me because I've seen what makes you cheer. But maybe they will use reason and logic, right? To explain this to us. In the immediate wake of the fatal shooting of conservative activist Charlie Kirk Wednesday at Utah Valley University, little to nothing is known about the suspect, and prominent Democrats were quick to condemn the violence. There were some prominent Democrats, but not a single word about the hundreds of thousands of progressives and liberals who were laughing about it. If this is not proof of propaganda and brainwashing and indoctrination, I don't know what is. And yet many on the far right have taken to social media to claim that the shooting and an increase in political violence in general was incited by the political left and the Democratic Party. Well, here's the thing. When it comes to an increase in political violence in general, yeah, that's a fact. I mean, there was a presidential assassination. The last one was with Kennedy. So I would say that we are in a specific time in which political violence is a problem. And I know you're going to bring up something from the 90s. Great, it's the 90s. We're interested in now. And there is a massive block of time between something that happened in 1995 and something that is happening now. But in general, was it incited by the political left and the Democratic Party? But if you call everyone a Nazi and a fascist, and then someone gets shot with things written on the bullets, catch fascist, open quotes, the left is a party of murder, close quotes, wrote Elon Musk on his social media platform on X. It's a real treat to see all these liberals condemn political violence now, posted Katie Miller, the wife of White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller. Now, given, the only thing I would have Elon Musk do in this case is perhaps to underline that not everyone on the left is like this. With that being said, this, ladies and gentlemen, is unbelievable. It's a real treat to see all these liberals condemn political violence now. I know she's using it to attack the liberals and tell them, but you called us Nazis. She's right. She's right. But then again, even though there are some that condemn it, I think to show that I also have a problem with people on my side, I want to underline, let's not focus against the people who condemn it. Let's focus against the people. Yeah, and to be fair, if she has a problem with people who kept calling, for instance, Charlie Kirk, fascist, then he gets shot, and then you say, poor guy, well then, of course, you're a hypocrite. With that being said, it is still worse, the people who condemned it and said, we got Charlie in the neck, laughing and singing. So I would focus the energies on those. Anyway, she says, you called us Hitler, you called us Nazis, you called us racists. You have blood on your hands. She's absolutely right. It's time for the Trump administration to shut down, defund, and prosecute every single leftist organization, tweeted far-right activist Laura Loomer. If Charlie Kirk dies from his injuries, his life cannot be in vain. We must shut these lunatic leftists down once and for all. Once again, yes, if it's the people who, specifically the ones who cheered for the death, they should lose their job and their family and friends should abandon them. But no government intervention when it comes to protected speech. With those who instead said now go after his bigoted children and wife, those need to be incarcerated immediately. The left are evil, murdering skill. Yeah, okay, we got that. Great. Conservative social media personality Isabella Maria De Luca similarly wrote, we don't have a gun problem, we have a Democrat problem. Right-wing podcast host Joe Manarino called for the Democratic Party to be classified as a domestic terror organization and their members and leaders treated accordingly. I would do that with Antifa, to be honest. Democrats are the party of death and destruction. Okay, we got the point. Can you imagine, though, like this, the writer of this article is complaining about how conservatives reacted to the shooting of our own. Yet, what do you think would have happened if it was Destiny or Sam Piker who got the bullet? And by the way, I would have said, this is awful. That's what I will say. I hope no left-wing, centrist, or right-wing public commentator gets the bullet. Same with the politicians. When Biden, whom I loathe, and this is something I will say again on a future video that I'll make in a little bit, because it has to do with this a little bit, but I'll say it here as well. When Biden stated that he had cancer, I wished him well. I left a comment that said, I hope you recover, because if someone has cancer personally, just as someone who has had to deal with that in my own family, that's what I say. You can be decent even when you hate everything about your political opponents, but this is something we are losing. What's interesting to see here, it's now they're pointing the finger because conservatives are clearly upset that one of our own was shot while he was exercising his freedom of speech, and hundreds of thousands of you laughed about it. And it's not the first time. What did a lot of Democrats say? Not everyone, but what did a lot of Democrats say when they almost assassinated Trump? Next time, don't miss. There were people at massive rock band, whatever the heck, and the guy with the microphone, next time, don't miss, and everyone, yeah! How about that one? So what would Democrats do if a conservative right-winger shot a left-wing political commentator in the neck? You would do the same thing. So focus on the people who are cheering. That's what I say. Now, also, why do they call him a far right? This is another thing. Look at the manipulation. They have learned nothing. MAGA pundit Charlie Kirk shot dead at a university speaking event. The far right. If Charlie was far right, I'm Odin. How was someone like Charlie Kirk far right? He was compassionate. He was decent. He was honest, he was transparent, he was firm in his beliefs, and he was very conservative. Further right than me, that's for sure. But he's not far right. He was that nice one. Now you have to deal with the rest. And the thing that amazes me about all of this is how anyone with even a modicum of critical thinking could ever think that the shooter was conservative. And the way they push this is because they say, well, he had a conservative family, and they were Mormons, the family. So he was a right-winger, and then why did he shoot Charlie Kirk? I haven't got a clue at that point. Or he was a groyper, so he was like one of the fans of Nick Fuentes. And he wrote fascist, though, on the bullet. And he had a transgender, furry boyfriend / girlfriend, whatever the heck he identified as. And again, the fact that the transgender guy has nothing to do with this, as far as we know. If there is evidence, however, that guy knew, he needs to go to prison too. You understand that? But if there is no evidence, who cares what consenting adults do? I don't care. The privacy of your home is your business. The shooter was left-wing. Now, I know that there are some people in my community. Sometimes when I post about this on X, they tell me that's not the shooter, it's a psyop. The shooter is someone else. Fine. You want to believe that? I don't know. I mean, I'm a civilian. The only thing I can say is if that's the real shooter, then the shooter was a radicalized left-winger. 100%. And he hated Charlie Kirk because Charlie Kirk had very traditional and conservative values, particularly also when it comes to the LGBTQ community. Even though he was never hateful, and that's a lie, but repeat a lie enough times and calling him a fascist and a Nazi enough times, this guy was radicalized into thinking that Charlie Kirk was what he was not. And he shot him because of it. And it's clear, he himself was most likely LGBTQ. So he felt threatened by Charlie Kirk because the radical left told him he was a threat. But Charlie wasn't a threat, and the real threat was the weapon this guy discharged against Charlie. Because once again, this idea that words are violence, therefore physical violence is a just and appropriate retaliation is what a lot of people are radicalized into left-wing thinking tanks believe to be appropriate. So unless you fix that and understand that you fight words with words, and that's what you do in a civil society, until there will be destinies and Hassan Pikers who will continue to be rewarded for their calls and incitement for violence and direct threats towards people. Until justice is presented and we show that there are legal and societal repercussions for people who cross the line of decency, humanity, and civility. Until that happens, this will continue to happen, and people will continue to try and gaslight you. I know that if you're right-wing, you agree with me in this, and if you're centrist, you do too, particularly if you're non-violent. But if you're left-winger, you can still agree with me. You can condemn what happened to Charlie Kirk. You can say, hey, the shooter, if he's the real shooter, I'll grant you that. If he's the real shooter, he's a left-winger, but he was a crazy one. I'm a left-winger, you can tell me, but I'm not like that, and I think what happened to Charlie Kirk was wrong. Great. Then that will be the most successful us versus them ever, because it's going to be decent people versus extremist, violent maniacs, regardless of what they believe or whatever politics they say they have. But the reality is, if we continue this, if you continue to ignore the evidence, like I was wrong about the guy who shot the Mormons at church. He was a Trump supporter. I was wrong about that. I saw the evidence afterwards. Fine, I was wrong. It's still not a case of political violence, though, because he didn't shoot the Mormons because he was at right-wingers, because a lot of Mormons were conservatives. It was a personal, private matter that had to do with a woman that he had a relationship with, and he got burnt and hated the Mormons for it. So it's not a case of right-wing political violence, but the guy was right-wing. I'm not going to say, no, he's a leftist after I review the evidence, after it's presented to me. Likewise, if you're a decent individual and you value empirical data, even if your echo chamber told you that the shooter was conservative and it's just conservative infighting, after you see the data, you review the bullets, you see his history, you see everything else about this that clearly shows the guy was radicalized into left-wing thinking, and after you see all of the celebrations and the reactions, and if that disturbs you, it's fine. Just keep being left-wing if you want, economically, politically, societally, but you can distance yourself from people like this rather than trying to gaslight and adhere to what the current echo chamber is trying to do in order to propagandize and shape the events to benefit them at the expenses of the truth. This is my message. If you think it's a message of bigotry, I really hope it's not too late for you to be unbrainwashed, but I would start looking outside the echo chamber. Anyways, this is what I wanted to talk about today. It's enough stupidity for one day. I'm going to go make a pizza. Thank you for watching.